with a brand new bag. Papa's got a brand new bag, boys and girls. And I think that I need to devote and dedicate more time to making videos, to telling my story. How you doing, guys? It's back to the Marat in Real Life show. Been away for a while. I'm really sorry. I apologize deeply that I haven't been able to produce that recovery episode for you yet. Don't worry, it's still in the works. I still have it coming. I want to answer some of your questions. Not some of your questions. There's like one other person there, so I'm going to answer your questions. Um, but really, I just wanted to touch base with you guys and let you know what's going on. Um, I'm really not. It might seem that way, but I'm really not in the best of moods lately, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Um, but with every dark cloud, there's a bit of a silver lining, which can sometimes be deceptive in and of its own right. Okay, let me paint the picture for you here. Let me lay it all out here for you. So, recently got started on some new business ventures, some new business ideas, really getting involved with the AI code development agents and Claude Code in particular. And I know, as I mentioned in my previous video, I been a software developer for over 25 years, and I tell you that I'm just I'm just overjoyed. I'm just overjoyed with the prospects, with the promise of artificial intelligence. I'm absolutely blown away. I'm absolutely blown away. It's fantastic. It is fantastic. I'm having the time of my life. This is what guys like me dreamed about 25 years ago is semantic search, search that we can talk to, search that responds without our having to look through, you know, 3,000 web pages in order to get to the truth or get to the facts. A computer you can actually talk to that will respond and sound like a human being. But not only that, a task runner, an agent for yourself, so you can accomplish, rudimentary business logistics. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I'm so anyway. So I have a couple of new projects on the way that are very heavily AI driven. And it's just because I can produce a significant quantity of work in a fairly short period of time and get these ideas out there while they're still fresh, while I have the energy and the will and the impetus to work on them. So that's been one thing I've been working on are these some of these new side projects. That a couple of them, I've wanted to get a couple of nonprofits off the ground. One of them is titled After Encephalitis, and it's there's really only one international nonprofit called Encephalitis International or Encephalitis Global. They're based out of the UK, and they're really the only organization that caters to victims of encephalitis or people who have gone through the encephalitis journey. And I think there's a vacuum in terms of that situation. Other organizations need to exist, while Encephalitis Global focuses on, providing encephalitis related information to direct victims, while they're going through encephalitic symptoms, they describe encephalitis related procedures and whatnot. Um, they tell stories from encephalitis survivors, but they do not focus really on treatment of any kind. And I understand because they're not a medical organization. They can't legally focus or recommend any kind of medical treatment. But at least a website that explores or gives people, intercommunal advice about what they can possibly do to improve their, their conditions. Excuse me. So, and this has to do with, having the proper supplements very early on in your encephalitis journey to make sure your brain is, recovering optimally. Um, it involves getting the proper counseling because you're going to have some kind of, psychological consequences as a result of, not the encephalitis itself, but the after effects, the metamorphosis that occurs after brain inflammation, especially if it's serious, which mine was, and like I said in my earlier video, I did almost die from the encephalitis. And so I'm going to get into my recovery video. The recovery video is going to talk about this is all going to be in a few days here. The recovery video is going to talk about what it's like recovering from herpes simplex encephalitis induced by Viagra and cured miraculously with turmeric. So I'm going to go through everything that I've been through, and it's probably going to be another long video. But anyways, so what else have I been up to? So one of the reasons why I haven't been able to, to produce the needed video that I wanted to make regarding my recovery is because I've been dealing with medical drama. About a week or two after I made that video, my neurologist of 4 years decided to let me go because of something I said. And in my opinion, if a man holds himself to be a man at 35 or 38 years old or however old he is now, and he reacts childishly to being, to somebody insinuating that he's not doing a good job or he's not giving me all the information that I need. If I'm insinuating that and he's retaliating towards me as a physician, as a doctor, supposedly who's, supposed to do no harm, then, he's not behaving like much of a man. And that's, I'm parsing it, I'm paraphrasing. But basically what I said is that, I've been hearing a lot of I don't know from you, Dr. Ramachandran, for the last 4 years. And, if you can't face up to that fact, that that's what you've been telling me for 4 years, then, a person who can't do that isn't much of a man in my hard-earned opinion. And my opinion has been hard-earned, ladies and gentlemen, believe you me. Or don't, but let me tell you about it and then you will. So, my neurologist let me go because of a perceived slight, so innocuous, so minor. Anybody else would have just brushed it off their shoulders. This crazy guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but he took it so personally that, I mean, honestly, in my estimation, it's almost tantamount to murder. He's basically, trying to kill me is what it feels like. I understand that's an extreme, and that's an extreme statement to make. I get that, sure, but if you're going to go after somebody so maliciously and just discontinue services all of a sudden, just because they don't like your style, or they said that, well, you're not much of a man if you can't face up to the fact that you haven't had any answers for me for 4 years. I mean, you have to have a particularly, in my opinion, twisted mindset in order to cross that bridge into maliciousness, for somebody insulting you, wanting to do them harm because of something they said to you. This is schoolyard shit. This is the kind of thing that you do on the playground with playground bullies and whatnot. Oh, he called me a name. Sticks and stones. Holy shit, man. You're going to discontinue services, leave me with the bare minimum. Anyways, it's a long story. I'm going to get into it in another video. He knows my situation. He knows what I've been through. And he leaves me like that over something, over like some minor insult. And the reason why it happened, I'll get into it briefly. I started to experience some auditory hallucinations. I would like start hearing my mom's voice coming from the background and she was nowhere, to be found, and I started hearing other sounds, that I couldn't really distinguish. Sometimes it was a voice saying Marat or hey. It was just weird. And I didn't have them that often, maybe like once a week or once every 3 or 4 days. And this went on for a few months. And finally, I had like two in one day, and it kind of freaked me out. So I got in contact with my neurologist of 4 years, and I wanted to find out what we could do. Anyways, make a long story short, he was very dismissive. He gave me nothing to go on, basically the same as he's been doing for the past 4 years. I've been under his care, supposedly, for 4 years. I still don't have any answers. The most I've been able to get out of him is a blood test and an MRI. And that's basically it. Throughout my 5 year experience, I have had two blood tests and one MRI. I've had MRIs scheduled multiple times. Boy, that's another whole story to get into. Guys, I got so much material to cover. It's really impressive. So, as a result of my departure from my neurologist, he left me with some inadequate referrals or recommendations, whichever you want to choose. He's supposed to give me 3 referrals per the guidelines, the medical guidelines set by the medical board of the state of California. He's supposed to give me 3 referrals. He gave me 3 recommendations. So the language is a little bit different there, and maybe that removes some of his responsibility, is that choice in language. But regardless, he left me sitting there holding the bag. He left me with nowhere near enough medications to be able to execute a plan to find another neurologist or find, you know, some other doctor who was willing to fill my very exotic prescriptions. And that's understandable. I mean, I've had 5 years into this journey, guys, and it's become apparent that victims of encephalitis often have to have very exotic medical or medication combinations to deal with their neurological deficits. That's a pretty well known fact. And I've joined all of the encephalitis support groups that I possibly could. I've tried to participate in discussions. I've left information regarding my own interesting findings in some cases. And I've learned about what people are going through. And it's a very rough road for these folks, guys. It's very rough. I would say it might be more difficult than cancer because, with cancer, we can do something. We have protocols, we have approaches, billions upon billions of dollars being spent in cancer research all over the world. But for every $1 billion of cancer research, there's approximately $1 in encephalitis research. And that's also the honest truth. There's nobody trying to unravel the encephalitis mystery out there in the world, it seems like. We're very few people. I tried to find an encephalitis specialist here in California, and maybe I'm not looking in the right place, but I haven't found any. I've come up dry. So the referrals that, my former neurologist gave me, they weren't recommendations, whatever. They weren't very good. They were pretty bad, as a matter of fact. I'm going to get into that. But it's been a struggle trying to make appointments to go see additional doctors, trying to get on board with a neurologist who will help me, hopefully, and I don't think anybody likes to feel like they're coming into a situation and they're having to beg for a service or beg for results, to plead, to demean themselves, to reduce their integrity and their dignity. I don't think anybody likes to feel that way, but that's the position I found myself in over the course of the last 5 months now, as I've been searching for some other neurologist or some other medical help. I've even gone so far as to try to go out of state, but I am completely trapped and bound here in California to my insurance company and due to the providers here in California. Only if something is not able to be done here in California can I go to another state, according to my understanding of my health insurance benefits. So I've tried to go out of state. I want to go to like Mayo Clinic, out in Arizona or maybe out in I think it's Minnesota. I want to give those guys a try. I'm just trying to get better. I've been trying for 5 years. And I'm not looking for a quick fix. I know there's no such thing in my case. I left that hope on the curbside long, long ago. That I'd be all right pretty quickly. That wasn't going to happen. Things, my condition would improve. I'd be fine. No, none of that has happened. And, but I haven't given up hope, guys. You can't give up hope. If you give up hoping, you give up living, basically. That's what it amounts to. And I haven't given up hope yet. I'm just still out there cranking, going from doctor to doctor to doctor, being used and abused by all of them, being used as a sack full of insurance money, basically. They don't want to fill my exotic prescriptions, especially the Lunesta prescription. But, and I've tried, over the course of the last 5 months to reduce my Lunesta intake every night. It used to be that it was a necessity, and I couldn't get away from 6 grams a night, no matter what it is I did. I mean, here it is. Hold on. Here they are. 6 grams of Lunesta I take every single night, or I used to, anyways. Now I'm trying to cut it down to about 4 milligrams. But it's a difficult transition a little bit. I mean, it's not the worst I've been through over the course of the last 5 years, but it's a little challenging. And the problem is that I've supplanted the additional Lunesta, the additional 2 milligrams, with a doxepin. So now I'm taking 100 milligrams of Seroquel, 50 milligrams of doxepin, 4 milligrams of Lunesta or Zopiclone, and 5 milligrams of Prazosin. That's my combination that I'm forced to endure, and I've been living with for 4 years. It's pretty extreme, but I've managed to make it and get through it on that medication regimen. It's been a bit of a relief, because I used to only sleep, and the medication only addresses my insomnia. I have plenty of other issues, but neurological as a result of the encephalitis. But the insomnia is the one that was the worst and has been the worst for the last 5 years. I could say that the erectile dysfunction, the sexual dysfunction, the sexual anhedonia is especially disturbing. I haven't had a normal erection or a normal orgasm in 5 years. 7 years, excuse me, 7 years. And yeah, so that got worse. And I'm just dealing with a little bit of brain fog here and there. A little bit of brain fog from time to time. So the result of switching up, the doxepin for the Lunesta has been that I find myself to be a little bit groggier in the mornings, which is honestly kind of nice because it's not something that I've had for a very long time. I don't wake up in the mornings being groggy or stretching and all of that. I don't do that. When I get up, it's like that, and I'm up. So, decided to get myself a tiny little bit of a drink. Friday night, been a long week, and wanted to mention one other thing about Dr. Ramachandran and my former neurologist. When I first got to the guy, he was my only hope. He was the only guy who was even remotely capable of helping me in any way. There were other potential candidates, but they did nothing for me. They did nothing for me, and I'm going to go all into all of that in separate videos because honestly, it's a lot to cover and it's valuable information. I think because it demonstrates, it illustrates how you should or could potentially proceed in your own medical investigations with providers, with your doctors, with your nurses, with your physicians. That's really the lesson. That's really the takeaway from all of this is, how do I deal with my own medical issues when they are complex, when the answers are elusive? How do I communicate this to my doctors? How do I myself contend and live with the difficulty of having to relay all of that to somebody, not only the experience itself, but everything that came afterwards. Um, it's quite complex and it's not for everybody. I mean, I'm of the impression that plenty of people probably pass away because they're not able to properly describe their symptoms or give the doctors an understanding of what they're going through. I'm sure plenty of people die that way, because they're just not aware or not as aware of their own bodies as maybe they should be. You know, that's definitely a possibility. But I really had faith in Dr. Ramachandran when we first started working together. I have to be honest. For the first 6, 8 months, he was really great. For the first 6 months, definitely. Not in terms of his knowledge or him sharing information with me, but just in terms of his ability and willingness to write prescription after prescription after prescription. I've been to plenty of other doctors, and most of them won't go half the distance or even 10% of the distance that Dr. Ramachandran went with me. And for that, I am grateful. For that, I am grateful. But, that wasn't the point. That wasn't the point. And I made that very clear early on in our adventures together. The point was to get some answers so that we could build off of those answers to create some solutions. That was the hope. That's what I was driving for. And as I mentioned earlier, the most I got was blood test and an MRI after 4 years. We could have done more extensive workups. I'm convinced that we could have, but we didn't. We didn't go that extra mile. Not that I didn't want to, but my doctor didn't want to. Probably because it would involve having to become closer with the patient and having to get more involved with the patient's case. I don't know if he wanted to do that or didn't want to do that. Anyways, so that's the update. That's what I've been going through, another round of medical hell in terms of getting bridge prescriptions and seeing providers. I mean, you could say that, it's my own fault for opening my damn mouth in the first place. Sure, you could say that. Sure, you could say that. But it's not the truth. It's not reflective of reality. The reality is that I reached my limit of tolerance with this particular doctor. And the fact is that I couldn't get away from the man unless I went to another institution entirely, unless I went back to UCLA Health. I sure as hell didn't want to do that. So I tried to go see other neurologists within the Cedar Sinai network. They wouldn't let me go see them because I was already under the care of Dr. Ramachandran. I don't understand these policies that, they put into place in order, to secure a particular physician's dominance over a patient. It's It's obscene. It's obscene. So, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that's what I've been dealing with for the last 5 months. That's what's kind of made it a little prohibitive for me to make a lot of videos, which is what I really want to do. But I think I'm going to start off with a brand new bag. Papa's got a brand new bag, boys and girls. And I think that I need to devote and dedicate more time to making videos, to telling my story, um, to getting the word out there about encephalitis, about turmeric as being a potential treatment for viral encephalitis. There's no other way to do it, folks. I just have to get out there and message, tell people about my struggle, my journey, the miracle cure, and maybe even go so far as to finance my own studies, get my own studies financed, do a mouse model study on, the effects of turmeric on mice infected with herpes simplex encephalitis, viral brain inflammation. Do a study on that, based on, my investigations with AI about those kinds of studies. It could cost $50,000 to $200,000 in order to get good results. As a result of that, due to that study, it would be worth the $200,000. It would be worth it to any institution, to any company to invest the money to do that research just to get some answers. And another, study that I'd like to conduct is the study that I mentioned. Those, well, actually not I mentioned, but those 5 doctors in that NIH abstract I pointed out, the study that they recommended being done, which is a study to determine how often does herpes simplex encephalitis occur after exposure to Viagra in patients with primary herpes simplex, or excuse me, herpes simplex virus infections, type 1 or type 2. So that study to determine how often, do people get HSC after Viagra if they have herpes. That's another study that could be conducted via a mouse model, but nobody's bothered to even try yet. Nobody's bothered to even try, to even get some preliminary evidence. And the only excuse, the only conclusion that I can come to is that people are being prevented from doing that study. There's no interest in it whatsoever. A mouse study, a mouse model study probably wouldn't provide enough data or enough information. But if I can, I will undertake that fact-finding mission myself, if I am so able. If I'm given an extra, $200,000 to make that study happen, I'll make it happen. I'll put the resources together. I have no lack of faith in my capability to get the job done. Because, honestly, ladies and gentlemen, that's what I've been doing for the past 25 years. I've been in the trenches. I've been developing software. I've been getting the work done for my clients, on time and for the most part on budget. I'm not trying to advertise my services. I'm just stating a fact. And if, I have the resources to conduct a mouse model study on the effects I just described, conduct a mouse model study on the effects of turmeric on mice infected with herpes simplex encephalitis, I will happily take on that mission because I think that's incredibly important. It's incredibly important. We could potentially save thousands of lives, if not hundreds of thousands, over the years. So that's my update, guys. I know this video has been a little bit long in the tooth, kind of like my other video. I'm in that vein. I tend to talk a little bit, sometimes a little bit too much. You guys be the judge. But don't judge me. Anyways. So I'm trying to approach this with a little bit of levity. The situation is, the circumstances are a little bit dire. I don't know how much longer, the current primary care guy that I found is going to be willing to fill my prescriptions. He thinks that maybe psychiatry might do me some good. The only thing psychiatry can do for me is just write some more prescriptions, and I've already been on all the prescriptions. All right, I'll show you. I'll show you when we get to the recovery video. But I understand cognitive behavioral therapy. Could have been an answer at one time. I've tried it. I did, I think, 3 or 4 months of CBT for insomnia when I first developed it. I didn't want to get on medication. I wanted to avoid these pills at all costs. I just want to get back to my baseline. I want to get back to my normal life, the way it was before all this shit. But there's no going back. There's no going back, guys. And you have to face facts sooner or later in your life that the past is the past. All you can do is move forward. You have to accept that sometimes you change permanently because of the effects of your experience. And there's no going back to the old you, as much as you might want to, as much as you might feel you don't have a choice. You have to accept. I hate calling this my new normal. It's not my new normal. It's far from new normal, and it's definitely not new to me. All right, I've been living with it for 7 years now at this point. 5 years after the encephalitis, 7 years after the initial the stroke incident or the aneurysm incident, whatever the hell it was. So, but you have to accept that, guys, that sometimes there's no going back. There's no going back. Or if you can go back, it's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to be more effort possibly than you're willing to put in. So you have to realize that as well. Anyways, I'm going to let you go. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate you guys that are out there. I'm going to get back to you with this recovery video because hopefully it will be interesting, and I'm going to try to answer the few questions that I have out there. Please, subscribe, like, do whatever you can with this video. If you like the tone of my voice, if you like my eyes, feel free to subscribe or like or comment on this video. I just wanted to share with you this update, what's been going on, why it's taken me so long to produce the recovery video. Everything has a reason. I've been trying to fight the good fight. My recent adventures with some of these doctors, have really left me at odds. And honestly, guys, I'm going to be suing some physicians. I'm going to be suing some doctors the only way that I can in small claims court because no attorney will take my case, seeing as how I'm not dead and I'm not missing some arms or legs that I should have otherwise. That's the reality, is that you can't get legal help for a malpractice case if you're not grievously injured in some way, or if that malpractice is just so heinous that it's obviously cruel and unusual and what else have you. But sometimes mistakes can be made. I can understand mistakes, but what I can't understand is a physician purposely acting dismissively and, flagrantly wasting a patient's time just so they can make $300 or $400 for a 20-minute consult by insurance paying them. That's what I can't understand, is how can they be so careless, so irresponsible? It's a tragedy, man. I used to want to be a doctor. I was pre-med for a year back at Akron University. And I'm so happy that I didn't go into the profession because I would be surrounded. I would be surrounded on a daily basis by people whose ethics I do not like, whose ethics I disagree with. And I couldn't work under those circumstances. I couldn't do it. And I understand why some doctors, resent the profession. They resent their choice of having gone into medicine. But it's too late. They're locked in, and they know they can't do anything about it. And I'm of the opinion that as soon as a doctor crosses that stage and grabs that diploma, they have unwittingly signed up for a lifetime of slavery to the pharmaceutical companies, to the hospitals, to the insurance companies. You know, they're so proud of themselves when they finally get that diploma after 8 years of hard work and study. But what they don't realize is that they've unwittingly bought into a system which robs them of their ethics, which potentially robs them of their ethics, which is the core of the doctor-patient relationship. All right. So I'll leave you with that. Once again, thanks for listening, guys. Keep on watching, like, subscribe, do all that great jazz. Comment. I'd love to hear your comments, read your comments. Good or bad, I'll take them all. And yeah, look out for that for my follow-up recovery video because it's on its way. It's on its way, and it's gonna be tremendous. It's gonna be tremendous. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. All right. At least I hope you do. And if you don't, I'm sure you'll tell me about it. So let's look forward to that. And I'll see you soon, guys. Thanks again for listening.